All right, good morning. Hey, so we're going to look at this last discussion here, and looking at the problems with size and scale. So the issue we have is that we're looking at what is the ideal size of a government for ideal representation, right? And so we're looking at watch the videos from Dr. Livingston and tried to figure out, or just he discusses different historical viewpoints on this idea. And so that's the overall issue. The philosophical issue, of course, we're looking at is, does political order happen naturally, or does it happen? Is it man-made? And Livingston gives us a whole bunch of different viewpoints. Aristotle, from going all the way back to Aristotle, where Aristotle argues that the ideal government or the ideal nation, or republic should be about 300,000 people. Thesis, the German philosopher believes in this idea that you could have smaller republics that would join together and form federations for protection. And then you have David Hume that argues that the ideal republic should be about the size of Great Britain. And then you have Hobbes, and Hobbes doesn't set a limit on the size of this, but he does. His focus is not on representation or whatever, but maintaining social order. And as long as we have a strong central government, preferably one of such as like an absolute monarch, then everything will work out. And so I think the interesting thing about these three or these four different points of view that Livingston discusses is that, and Livingston doesn't touch on this idea, but as technology increases, the size of your republic or the size of the philosopher's republic begins to expand. And so Aristotle comes about, in like 400 BC, somewhere in that range. And technology is obviously very limited. The ability to communicate with large groups of people, very limited. The Greeks aren't necessarily known for their infrastructure. And so the ability to communicate over large spanses of place and time are a large area is limited by the ability of someone to walk from location A to location B to orally transmit information. Althesis from our German Federation, obviously he's going to grow up in boy, didn't look him up, but he's gonna grow up with the foundation of the remains of the Holy Roman Empire. He's also going to see the ideas of the printing press come about, and the ability to communicate through written work. Hume is going to come about and see the ability of Britain, similar to Althesis, with the ability to use printing for mass communication, and those ideas. And so, so you're going to see the environment that these philosophers grow up in is going to dictate their understanding of the world or their vision of the world. Even Hobbes, who is going to come about, and he's going to publish his great work, the Leviathan, in 1651 at the end of the English Civil War, and it's a response. I think what little I know, or what I know from my little brain about the Leviathan that I've read a couple times. Hobbes is making these political statements in response to the British people rising up and overthrowing Charles I. And we have this 10-year civil war in England. It's going to result with the execution of Charles I, and the establishment of a Commonwealth. And for Hobbes, this is going to be the idea of anarchy, that if a strong central government isn't there to enforce law and order, then you're going to have anarchy, and the people are going to rise up and kill kings and do whatever. And even going beyond the date of publication of Hobbes's work, you go from the King Charles I, you have a Commonwealth for 10 years. And then the people of England decide they don't like that, and so then they go back to monarchy. Right. And so, Hobbes is like, what's all this about? And so Livingston, discusses what is the end goal. And the end goal is this idea of human excellence or human virtue. And for Livingston, obviously, he's discussing these ideas of self-government, and having a small scale government that allows for rulers to know their constituents and for people to know the character of their rulers. And Livingston, he made most of he's made most of his career discussing things like secession and the ideas of the ability of people to form the size of their own government through that. I would argue that he and the thinkers the thinkers that were discussed in this unit, um, again, we're limiting ourselves with this idea of what our experiences are. And as technology begins to, continues to develop over time, um, we're able to, even with our large government today in the United States, we're able to communicate freely with our senators, our representatives. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily ideal that there's only 435 representatives, but at the same time, I don't think if we have 10,000 representatives in Washington, D.C., that you're going to have a more effective government. So I think the ability to use technology to communicate is something that does allow for a larger republic. Um, Livingston discusses the fact that the United States is Hobbesian, especially after the Civil War, and Lincoln comes about and doesn't recognize the right to secession. And I would argue that that's probably a fair assumption. However, the person that I was watching these videos and I was like, why isn't this philosopher being brought up? And that's of course John Locke. And Locke is his basic ideas of government are to to fulfill these natural rights. The government's put in place to protect the natural rights of its citizens, and those natural rights are life, liberty, and Locke calls it a state. Today we would call it property. And so once government fails to protect those ideas, then it's the right of the people to revolt, right? And so I think in the United States you do have that, and so then I wonder if you do have the right to change your government or rebel against your government, then does that supersede these ideas of secession if you can change the government the way that you want to? And then obviously through government, through passage of bills, you could secede at that point, I would suppose. But the mechanisms inside the United States to fulfill these ideas of self-government are, these ideas of frequent elections. We have elections every 6 months in the United States. Now, people only participate typically in the presidential elections or whatever, but we have small revolutions, every 2 years where you could replace every representative on the national level, or you don't like the person that's representing you, get out and vote. Technology allows us to communicate, at the push of a button. You can call your representative on the phone, you can call your senator's office, and you can voice your concerns right then and there. Technology allows us to see the actions of our elected officials, either on the news or through social media, through their newsletters, through organizations that that focus their attention on those things. And infrastructure, it's not that it wouldn't be that hard for me to go to my local airport, buy an airplane ticket, and fly to Washington, D.C., or see my representative, or for him to get on an airplane and come back to the area that he's from. Of course, in Kansas, once you become a senator, you immediately buy a house in another state and you never come back to Kansas again. But that's just where we are. And so, I think Livingston brings up some very interesting points about size and scale. I think some of the things that could have been mentioned in these videos to add to that would be, of course, the induction or the inclusion of what tools are put in place to allow for a larger republic. And you see as these thinkers progress across a timeline, their ideas of a republic grow and grow and grow. And so if we look at it, what's the idea of republic size today? Well, it's going to be bigger than what Hume thinks. It's going to be bigger than what Aristotle thinks. And that's because of things like infrastructure, the ability to get from point A to point B, and technology, and the ability to use modern tools to communicate instantaneously across large distances and maintain those things. So those are my ideas. Thanks for watching, and I enjoyed the class, and I hope everybody else did too. Best of luck moving forward to everybody. Bye-bye.